Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Today's guest is Bob Tippmann, and Bob is the CEO, President of Tippmann Engineering, and they have developed some really unique technology for the cold storage, mostly of food products around the world. It's a fascinating topic, and Bob has shown the power of even a smaller company competing with the big boys in meaningful ways. So listen closely as we look at competing against giants with Bob Tippmann. Welcome, Bob, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Bob, I always love my guests to self-describe their basic business, who they serve and what they do. They do a much better job of it. So I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. Your firm, who you serve, who's your target market primarily?
Sure. The name of the business is Tippmann Engineering, and our main product line is called Quick Freeze. And Quick Freeze specializes in the rapid freezing of palletized product. And most of that product that we freeze is protein products, any kind of meat or poultry or fish or anything like that. And that freezing is done primarily in cold storage warehouses throughout the United States, but we also serve the international market. I'm currently in Spain at an install where our equipment's being installed.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, hey, it's a tough job, but somebody has to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's great. So just for me, because candidly, it's not something I'm that familiar with. Just the idea of cold storage. It's one of those things we probably benefit from it every day with, like, you buy chicken or whatever. I'm assuming, like you said, protein, meat products. We don't think about how did it get like that? How did that happen? So I'm just curious a little bit, like, how does what you do work and affect those kind of supply chains?
Sure. So we refer to ourselves as the cold chain. And if you think about it, when food has been produced and it's refrigerated, it needs to stay refrigerated until it's consumed for the most part. So we refer to every piece of that logistics supply chain as the cold chain, and every link in that cold chain is just as important that we maintain temperatures and food safety throughout so that we can all eat healthy.
Right. So refreezing the chicken after it sat in the sun is not a good practice.
Bad idea.
And who would know, because it looked, but you'd eventually realize it, right? So no, that's exactly. Fascinating. So now, like cold storage or cold chain processes, I've been around for decades. People have been freezing chicken for a long time. You're just picking on chicken. But so what are some of the things, and I know your firm is really focused on innovating the cold chain. So what are some things new that you're bringing to the table that wasn't in the world until you guys figured it out?
Sure. So blast freezing or rapid chilling, all of that stuff kind of came around with Mr. Birdseye, freezing vegetables, turn of the last century. And then my partner, Dan Tippmann, is really the crazy inventor that came up with this process called Quick Freeze, which forces air to move between layers of boxed and palletized product. And it does it in such a way that it reduces the freeze time of versus a traditional blast cell. It cuts it in half or better. So it's something that it improves food quality, food safety, and it's less expensive for operators to freeze it in this manner.
Well, it also sounds like one of Batman's adversaries should have this or something.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting. So, I'm always fascinated by smaller businesses. When I say small, I mean not Fortune 500 enterprises, bringing innovation to markets where there's lots of money going around, lots of big players, and yet you found ways to create opportunity for yourselves. And now on a global market, right? So tell me just a little bit how the firm began. I mean, did it begin? I mean, I see Dan obviously figured this out, but before then it was doing something else, or I'm just kind of curious the journey that brought you from wherever you were to where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm fifth generation industrial refrigeration. Our family goes back to Pennsylvania where we were making beer, and the beer wasn't that great, but in the meantime, we had figured out how to make the beer cold. And so we became really good at that. And, at the time they were cutting ice out of the rivers to, and that was the way that ice was distributed. They cut it out of rivers and then ship it across the country from there. And my family got into industrial ammonia refrigeration, and my great grandfather created a company called Tippmann Engineering and ran that up through the 60s. And then it's kind of passed hands a couple of times, but it shut down in mid 70s. And then we reestablished Tippmann Engineering, and we were able to, kind of bring that legacy with us.
Wow. So that's really fascinating, because a lot of, family-owned businesses have their own challenges.
Sure.
Any small business has challenges, but there are some unique ones in family-owned business, including the inability to change from that which, granddad or dad wanted, right? And I've seen that up front and close and personal, where I see business owners not making the necessary changes because they're tied to almost a sense of obligation to the past. But here you had your firm, as I understand your narrative, kind of paused for a time. So did that kind of give you a clean sheet of paper where you say, we can use the name, we want to move the family legacy forward, but we can go in a boldly different direction. We're not tied to anything at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. Yes.
Okay. But now that's its own adventure. So in a sense, you got this business got to start twice, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so just and I'm talking here, Bob, to you as an owner, right? So some of the challenges of being an owner in a business, there are myriad numbers of challenges, of course, but getting off the ground, if you can look back to that time period and so on, and when you got in, and I don't know, were you involved in the business from that transition time?
It started, I think the first install was in 08. It was a really slow process. I got involved in 2014, and so they had been doing it for about 6 years. And then over the time period that I got involved, we more than doubled the number of installs. So it had gone from early adopter to starting to go into mainstream right when I got involved. And
Wow.
I have a background in manufacturing and manufacturing processes, and I was able to utilize a lot of those skills to redo the way that we built these systems and designed them. And I moved everything from 2D drawings to 3D models and so on and so forth. I was able to do that fairly quickly.
So modernizing the company, even though it rebooted like in 08, but it needed further modernization to take you into the teens, the 2000 teens, effectively. So as you go out into the market, and people say, well, I don't know, in your industry, are you guys like famous in the cold chain, or are you becoming famous? Are you the brand that people all want at this point, or are you still climbing that hill a bit?
I think that there's always going to be some of that. We're in every major player. Our equipment is in there, and that's what people want, and it's now the standard, so that people get the best performance, and it's a better quality product when they use our system to do it. So it's caught on really quickly. All of the major meat producers use it, or they specify that their vendors that freeze for them use our equipment, and
Wow.
it's we've done very well at that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's rare air to be in that kind of a situation. I've worked with a lot of like OEMs and so on, smaller OEMs, and it's hard to get that kind of recognition. The fact that you have means that your challenges going forward are going to be managing like growth, like scaling and so
Absolutely.
on. So I'd like to just explore that a little bit. So, you get this company, it restarts, it has family legacy, family's obviously involved, you're involved. And now you're starting to grow perhaps beyond where family can fill every slot, right?
Sure.
And now we hear all about, in every category of the economy, labor shortages and so on. Are you dealing with any of those issues right now?
Yeah, but on a much smaller scale than some other people that are in my space. This kind of the great resignation
Uh-huh.
that we're seeing is very much a real thing. I think that uh, that people are uh, exploring what it is that they really want to do with their lives after being holed up with COVID and all of that. So I think it's an interesting time, and it means that there's a lot more opportunities out there. There's people that are out there looking to take on the challenges that my company has, and I'm very excited about it.
Okay, well, so when you look at bringing somebody on board, and it doesn't, we don't have to focus on any particular role, but just somebody's coming on board, you're making an investment in headcount, you're bringing somebody on board. What are some of the things and the market is lean on talent, right? But do you have a sense as a business leader, as an owner, as president, of the kind of people, let's assuming that they have the necessary skills to do whatever the job is, right? So if it's bookkeeping, if it's running a machine, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. But do you look for other things in people because small companies really have the advantage of having a closer culture, but also could be at risk because it doesn't take much to change that culture with just a few hires that are the wrong ones, for you.
I
So
I completely agree. That's the number one outside of the skill set for the required uh, position that they're filling. It's it's all culture. It's all attitude, and uh, we we've worked really hard to build the family, the culture that we have, and uh, it's my solemn duty to protect that, and that's what I
yeah.
look for. Number one, always.
And so we know, and anybody, HR articles have been written about this, that even like an interview process, even with assessments, I mean, the real red flags that are obvious, right? Somebody interviewing and talking bad about their prior three employers. And so, you say, okay, red flag, don't want this guy or gal. Um, but what happens when you have somebody who slipped through those filters anyway? Do you find you can actually shift and help bring somebody along, or do sometimes it's just like, okay, man, we should have seen that this is not going to work?
Yeah, I feel like time is the best judge. You do the best that you can in the hiring process, but then it's that first 3 months, first 6 months that you really find out who it is that you brought into the company, and you both. I'm pretty clear about that. That's kind of my expectation is that we'll know in 6 months whether this was a good decision or not, and I don't try to cut them short of that. I always try to give people a chance to grow and to find their place in the company.
Wow. So, coming into the company as you did, part of obviously your last name on the business as well. That's one dynamic. How does that affect you when you're doing business or trying to close business? Do you find, and you probably have to sell to some very larger companies much larger than yourself. Do
Sure.
they view that, is that a plus that they're dealing with, they know right away they're dealing with a principal, or is it something that that you find that maybe has no impact whatsoever? I'm just kind of curious of the sales cycle, how things have changed in the last, 5, 6, 7 years for you in terms of the market.
Sure. Sure. It's really uh, the performance of our solution, and if I can uh, if I can put my foot in the door and get so that they can see what it's like on one pallet, and they can compare those results to the current method, then it's really a really short ROI for the customer, and it's a slam dunk. We make them look good, and so it's uh, really, it was, for me, it was like, let's let the technology speak for itself, and it's less about me or the company or anything like that. It was more, let's focus on the product to overcome kind of those challenges that you're describing.
Right. So in this case, you have a technological advantage over the status quo, right? That's as I
Exactly.
understand the technology. So that's a wonderful place to be if you're selling as an OEM and you're selling the thing. You want to have a technological advantage if you can have it. However, history teaches us that even companies with technological advantages don't always sustain that level of advantage because people figure out, oh, that's a good idea, we should try something similar. And I know you have patents and so on, and they probably can't do exactly what you do, but they start realizing there may be a market there. How do you see over the next couple of years your ability to stay competitive, to continue winning? And do you see the market responding to your innovations and trying to mimic it in some way? Or is it just a slow developing market and you still have some clear field ahead of you?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know if you're familiar with the S curve of innovation, but being able to pay attention, we pay attention to where we are on that curve, and I reinvest a lot of the money that we make into the next line of products. The newest thing that we released was 2 years ago, and it's the performance is similar to our older equipment, but the data collection, the control, all that, we took it really into the 21st century as far as the level of compliance, accounting, all these things just shot us up ahead of anything else that anybody's doing. And I think it's important that we're constantly trying to outpace ourselves. And we don't worry as much about the competition. It's more about we're already the leader, but we can't get comfortable. We need to figure out what's the next thing that we can take on and, get a new personal record.
Well, I love that because it's true. I've seen companies and owners and leaders, in a sense, get a little too skittish or worried about competition. I think you should be competitively aware, but you don't have to be, again, if you're the leader, they should be more worried about you. And the goal is you just compete against, you use the phrase personal best, always trying to make the technology better. That's also, it seems to me, Bob, that lends itself to having very loyal customers, who know that you're always coming up with something new and better for them.
Well, it's kind of funny. I was in a presentation and I was showing them the new stuff, and it was a customer that had just gotten involved with us on our previous line of equipment. And they're like, well, this is all different and new. Like, are you going to come up with something again new in 2 years? I'm like, yeah, yeah, we are. You can just figure out when you want to get involved in this, but yeah, it'll be new again in 2 years.
Wow. So it's not just iPhones, the iPhone 13 that's coming up new, the new quick freeze. I love it.
Exactly.
Great stuff. So, all right. Well, look, if you're looking out, let me just push it out from the immediate, but a little bit further down the road, like the next 5 or 10 years, right? So that's much longer visibility. That's not really a revenue question. It's more of a vision question. Where do you see a business in, let's say, in 10 years? If we were having this conversation in 2031, what would you want to be able to say happened?
That I was able to reduce the energy consumption in the cold chain by double-digit percentages. So if we look at overall, just the watts consumed in a lot of these buildings that keep our food safe and cold, it's staggering the amount of energy that is used in these facilities. And it's half of what was being used in these same facilities 25 years ago, but it's still a significant amount. And if I can come up with some solutions that get me into double-digit energy reduction in these cold storages, I think that I will have made a positive impact on the planet.
Wow. Well, until the Bitcoin miners catch up and they
right.
That's a good place to hide a secret Bitcoin operation inside a storage facility. Who would know? No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, no, I just saw, some miners just buy a utility, I think.
I'm not at all surprised, right? So, wow. Well, okay. So again, since we really focus our podcast on owner operators of B2B businesses, so I would like to, when I'm interviewing somebody like you, Bob, I'd like to ask you this question, and not to put any pressure on you, but if there's especially this last 2 years, the fact that you've been into growth, that you're now growing internationally. All these things are really exciting things, and congratulations on all of that,
Sure.
Bob.
Thank
But
you.
if you had like a number one tip to tell a fellow business owner about looking out over the next just very few years, like, hey, this is something that you should do, you know, kind of like if you were in a roundtable meeting and you all got a chance to share one good idea that you think might apply to a lot of other owners like yourself, what would that be?
It's a really good question. I think something that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they don't invest in good advice. They don't go spend more money on lawyers when they get started. They don't. They try to do the books themselves, things of that nature. I think that you really want to keep your focus on the things that make you money, not the things that cost you money. And if you can buy good legal advice, buy good legal advice. And if you can buy good financial accounting advice, do that. And focus your efforts and energy on the things that grow your company.
Great. Focus on the things that grow your company. And, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, Bob, but a lot of owners that I've worked with over the years and those I've interviewed over the years and so on, not everyone is thinking growth. Everybody would like to grow, but not everybody's willing to work for the growth. Because sometimes it's good enough. But these last couple of years, I think, have woken up a lot of people that if you ain't growing, you're dying, because it's gonna be it's really tough out there. So Bob, thank you so much for sharing with us on the Revenue Throughput podcast today. Really appreciate you being a guest on our show, and safe travels and good luck to you in Barcelona. All right.
All right. Thanks.